G'day everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how you can make a traditional kangaroo fur hat to keep you warm in the winter. Now this is an educational video that deals with the topic of native Australian wildlife, so please continue watching to see the disclaimer on how this can be done and how this was done both lawfully and respectfully. Using animal skins for clothing is a primitive practice that dates back thousands of years around the world. The Australian Aboriginals were the same. Possum pelts sewn together often made cloaks and clothing, using kangaroo sinew to stitch together. They could be used as blankets, baby carriers and wraps as well. Kangaroo hides were also used for the same purposes. Lieutenant William Braidley writes in 1789, made of the skins of small animals, sewed or laced together, some part was of the opossum skin. These were curiously carved on the inside, every skin having a different pattern, and the whole formed a piece that was supposed they might use to cover a child with. The needle they used was found. It is a hard piece of wood with which they make holes, it not having an eye, to receive the thread, which was found and appears to be a sinewy fibre from the tail of some small animal. When the first Europeans arrived in Australia, they often used possum and roo hides that they traded for, since wool was still scarce in the new colony. Sealers, escaped convicts, bushrangers and early bushmen would have often dressed in a similar way to the indigenous in these native fur cloaks. Europeans lived rough, often adopting indigenous practices. The hides of these animals were perfect for the conditions in the colder southern regions of Australia. When I discovered a deceased eastern grey kangaroo on our farm, I decided I could use this opportunity to make something of my own. So because we're dealing with native Australian wildlife in this video, I do have to put quite a few disclaimers in to start off this video. So please bear with me as I just explain through some of this stuff. Now, every state and territory has different laws when it comes to the collection of wildlife and what you can and can't do. Now, in Victoria, you can't just go and shoot, hunt, kill, trap or interfere with native wildlife like eastern grey kangaroos out on public land or state forest and things like that without the necessary permits that allow you to do that. Even on private property, you can't just shoot kangaroos without a permit in regards to pest control. I'm pretty sure that you can't even just go and collect deceased bodies from state forests or public land, even things like roadkill. You have to be very careful to make sure you are within the bounds of what is legal within your state and within your territory, because we are dealing with native Australian wildlife here. Now, lawfully and legally, you can own eastern grey kangaroo furs here in Victoria, but you have to have come into possession of that fur in a lawful manner. I would like to stress that this kangaroo, eastern grey kangaroo, which I found stuck in our barbed wire fence, was already deceased. Now, this happened quite a few months ago in the summer, and when I found this deceased kangaroo, it was checked in regards to its gender to make sure it didn't have any joey in its pouch, and a wildlife carer has been contacted for consultation as well. So it was deceased, it was on private property. I had to remove the carcass because being on a farm with stock, it was going to become a biohazard, even in the fact that it can attract wild and feral dogs to the area to eat the carcass. So the carcass had to be removed anyway from where it was. Once the hide was removed, the carcass was placed in some bushland on private property here so that it can return to the earth, return to all the insects. We also have a healthy wedge-tailed eagle population here in the area, so they definitely come down and feast on that carcass as well. So obviously you can tell I'm being not just lawful, but I'm being respectful to the native Australian wildlife, and that's what I want to stress here in this video that must be done. I also want to say that this hide is for my own personal use only. I'm not selling it. It's not being sold for commercial use or anything like that, or even displayed, you know, out in schools or public or things like that. It's just for my personal use on my bush camps that I'm going to be using it. So as you can see, this is a sensitive area. You need to be lawful. You need to be respectful to native wildlife. You need to make sure you know what you're doing and what your state and territory's laws are. Obviously, I'm posting this on YouTube so, for educational purposes. So I need to just let you know and put these disclaimers in to cover myself, to let everyone know that I'm doing the right thing here. Now that I've spoken about all that, let's get into the video. I'm going to show you the process of turning this into the hat. I'm not going to show too much footage of me removing the roof from the fence or footage of me skinning off the hide, just so I'm not posting too much confrontational kind of footage onto YouTube. I think that this stuff should be available for everyone to watch, even kids. It doesn't bother me, but with YouTube, with the algorithm, with some people, it is sensitive matter and they may be bothered by it. I hope you understand. Let's get into the video. Here's a small one. Geez, he got caught tight. It's such a shame. I know it's a shame. It's an ugly thing to see, but yeah, we run this fencing because of cattle that, I don't know. People, if you have ideas of how do you stop that from happening, I really don't know. Poor fella. Not sure exactly how I'm going to do this, but I've got my R&N blade here, Tassie Tiger knife, and this is a 1930s Bunny's knife, which is really sharp. So alright, time to salt this bad boy up, and I am gonna absolutely smother it with salt. Alright, we're in our garage where we keep the wood, and that's my fallow deer hide. I've put it in this bucket, it's salted up, and I've put this mesh over so it can still breathe, but it'll keep all the flies off it. This is the coolest place we'd probably have in the summer that's not inside, because the wife probably won't allow it to be inside. I can leave that there for quite a while, and when I get round to doing some tanning, I'll tan it up. There we go. Now I'm going to be doing a method called bark tanning. Now bark tanning seem to have been quite common in the Northern Hemisphere, whether in Europe, also obviously in North America as well. It doesn't seem to have been something seen commonly amongst our own indigenous. It seems that our indigenous, after removing the fat and the meat off a hide, would smoke it or dry it in the sun, and pretty much that's how they would use it as blankets and cloaks and things like that. Maybe there was a bit of fat tanning as well that was done. I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to find information on that, so if anyone does have information, I'd love to hear about that. But the method I'm going to be using is bark tanning. Now, bark tanning did become a major Australian industry from the 1850s onwards and well into the 1900s with European, obviously, settlement and colonisation here in this country. And the black wattle was a favourite native Australian plant harvested because its bark held a lot of good qualities with the tannins in its bark. So yeah, from the 1850s they were tanning leather. They were also tanning sails and fishing nets in Lakes Entrance in Gippsland to help with the decay of the salt water there. So it was quite common and quite popular to have bark tanning in this country. By the early 19th century, regions such as Western Port and Portland had become key hubs for harvesting wattle bark. Before long, the practice spread widely across Western Victoria and reached into the southern coastal areas of East Gippsland. The industry expanded quickly. By 1868, around 2,000 tonnes of bark had been prepared for export at Bairnsdale alone. In the years between 1871 and 1884, close to 20,000 tonnes of wattle bark were shipped out from Portland. By the early 1880s, it was estimated that roughly 1.5 pounds of black wattle bark could produce a pound of leather, and that a single tonne of bark was enough to tan approximately 25 to 30 bullock hides. So unfortunately, our tanning industry did do quite a lot of environmental damage back in the day from the clearing of forests, also the dying off of the black wattle once the bark was harvested off it. Also the poisoning of our waterways close to where these industries were set up was also a common thing. So it's a bit of a shame that there was quite a fair bit of environmental damage that came from the industrial sized or scale bark tanning in this country. Growing concern from the colonial government over widespread forest damage and the possible consequences for both the tanning and the footwear industries led to the establishment of a Wattle Bark Board of Inquiry in 1878. The inquiry produced a number of broad recommendations, including introducing licences for bark harvesting, placing limits on when it could be collected, and promoting the cultivation of wattle plantations. So as you can see, doing tanning in a sustainable way is very, very important. Now I'm being very grateful because throughout this whole process, I've been guided by both Will and Eva from Wild Beings. They have been really great with the knowledge that they've handed over to me, as well as Jaden Cameron from Traditional Tanning New Zealand. He's been fantastic. He does a lot of possum skins, brush-tailed possums, but he's been really great in giving me advice and the process on how to tan this kangaroo hide, which is what I'm going to show you now, how I tanned this roo hide so I could make a roo hat out of it. I'm here on the farm. I'm actually right at the front near the road. So it's a bit noisy at the moment, but I've come down here. The back bushland is good, but along the front here we have some black wattle that's quite well developed and well grown, which means there's quite some good sized branches on it, which I'll be able to cut. And apparently black wattle is very good. It has good properties in it for the tanning, bark tanning method and solution that you brew up. So I'm going to cut down a few of these big branches and use these and get the bark off them. Okay, that's about a 10-litre bucket full of black wattle bark. All right, here we are in the little kitchenette in the shed. Now, what I've done, I've got all my black wattle here. I've got a big urn here now. Usually you'd cook this big brew over a fire, but it's fire danger period at the moment. We've got a couple of really hot days today. Today's not a fire-ban day, but tomorrow is probably going to be a total fire-ban day. So anyway, we do have an old urn. I thought I'd just make a brew in this. It's easy to control without having fire. And by the way, I couldn't find a 20-litre pot anywhere in my area to buy. I had to order it online. It's going to take ages to come. So I'm using this old urn, which we don't use anymore, to have a consistent brew. And I'm going to brew up this bark over the next maybe 3 or 4 hours. I'm going to make 2 batches. The first batch, which will be a stronger batch, and then a second batch, which will be the weaker batch, which will go into the weaker batch first, maybe 24 hours, and then go into the stronger batch after that. So anyway, let's fill this up and get it going. Switch it to 100. All right, we've almost got a full boil there, so I'm going to start chucking the. I need a big spoon. Put that bark in. I'm going to turn this off. That has been on a rolling boil for a full 4 hours. Now, I've been told on this first bit of bark that I could actually brew it up 3 times. And I'm going to try this method that I've been told about, where I'm going to store this brew, going to let it cool. I'm going to store it. Then I'm going to reboil the bark again. And then I'm going to store that brew, and then I'm going to reboil the bark one more time, a 3rd time, and then I'll put the hide in the third boil just for like 6 hours, and then I'll transfer it to the 2nd boil for like maybe 24 hours or so, and then lastly to the first boil, which is the strongest batch after that. And I've been told that way it just can penetrate the hide a bit better, going from a weaker to a stronger one. It's all about the tannins that are inside the bark. It's a very complicated process. I do not assume to be an expert in any sense. I'm very much learning here as I go. gathering information from people who are helping me. So at this point I reboiled the bark into another weak brew. The idea was to place the hide in the weaker brew first and then place it into the stronger brew after. I also had to prepare the hide by removing all the salt that was on it and also get into the process of defleshing it. So using a bit of wood as a post, I could wrap the hide around to support it. Then I would use a blunt knife to scrape all the remaining meat and flesh off it. Sometimes it's easier just to peel the flesh straight off with your hands. I was also tempted to eat this salted brew meat as it was preserved well, but I decided it would be a good treat for the dogs. After this, I washed the hide and soaked it in water to soften it up. Alright. There's my hide. I've been just soaking it in water for the last hour just to really get it nice and soft, because it was very hard. It was very hard from preserving with the salt, but apparently you're meant to soak it in water before you put it in the bark tan solution. But I've got 3 different strengths of bark tan solution, so I'm going to chuck this now in the first one, and it's going to go in the first one for about 6 hours I think, and then maybe I'll do 24 hours or maybe 12 hours in the next one, and then 24 hours in the next one, so just kind of double it as it goes. So unfortunately there's been a bit of, as you can see there, a bit of a tear, very soft skin. So that was the weakest brew. You can already see, look at that, that's amazing. You can already see the colour is changing and it's going that darkish colour. So this is the second one I did, which, by the way, if you taste it, very astringent taste to it. But yeah, this one is, again, you can see, a lot darker coloured. And I think this one will be in here for maybe 24 hours I think, before I put it in the next really strong one. So next began a long process of tanning this hide over the next month or so. Basically it remained in this stronger brew for about 5 days. I would regularly stir the solution with the hide in it and would check to see if the hide was browning up. When the solution was losing its astringency, I would make a new brew. It actually required a bit more harvesting of black wattle bark, as the first amount I collected wasn't enough. I was really careful to try and just remove branches of the wattle bark so I wouldn't kill off a full tree that we have here on the property. I found that you could boil one amount of bark, about 10 litres worth, 2 times and get 2 solutions out of it. Every week and a half or so, I would take the hide out and do something called scudding, where I would squeeze all the old solution out of the hide and also scrape off some of the remaining flesh on top. This would also reveal lighter coloured leather underneath and could show me if the bark tannins had penetrated all the way through or not, and then I would soak it in a fresh brew for another week or so. After a month and a half, I could tell the hide was ready. So I fully washed it, making sure to get all the solution out of the hide. I then slowly dried the fur side up in the sun, keeping an eye on it, and I would also brush the hair every now and then as the fur slowly dried in the sun. I did also create a bit of an egg yolk solution to paint into the hide, and this was just another way to help keep it softened as it was drying up. Other ways I would try to get the hide softened was by scrunching it all up while it was still a bit wet and as it was drying. The hide was often still quite hard, so I would reapply water to it to soften it up, and then I would try softening the hide by stretching and rubbing it against the edge of a table. I also applied beef tallow to it before stretching, and I found that repeating this process a number of times was enough to get the hide to a level I was relatively happy with. all in all, this was almost a 2-month process from start to finish. So I'm here in my office. It's quite a cold day outside today, so I thought I might do this process now in my office inside. So this is my beautiful roo hide. Honestly, it's beautiful as it is. You could make a good pillow. It feels so nice. It smells good. I've tried to soften it as much as possible. It's not too bad. A little bit hard. It could probably be softened more, but I'm happy with that. Now what I have here is I've got myself some waxed linen thread, which I'm going to use to sew this thing up. And look, I've looked at multiple different ways of stitching and things like that. I'm just going to do this rough. This is going to be rough. This is going to be something that someone out in the bush might, you know, in a little bush hut might be able to whip up. But I have actually got some paper though to make, so kind of like a kid's crown, isn't it? But this will just give me a bit of an understanding of the diameter of my head. And I guess the idea is I'm going to wrap this around like this, wrap it around like that, and then this come in like that, and that'll sit on my head. Again, it's probably going to be a very rough job, but let's give it a crack and see if I can make something out of this. Now this looks green to me, but I thought I had gotten black thread. Oh well. Okay, this is the first part. Let's see if it fits on my head. Oh, it's a little tight, but I reckon I could loosen this up a little more by, you know, it's actually pretty good. I reckon that's pretty good. So the idea now is obviously this part here. I'm going to work out what I'm going to do with that. It looks pretty funny, doesn't it? I look like a bloody one of those pagan Germanic tribes or something. So I'm thinking of flipping this around and having a little bit of this fur on the inside like that, because that's going to be really comfortable. So as you can see, what I need to do now is these sides need to be sewed down like that, and I think once those sides are sewed down, that's my hat. Pretty cool. I'd be happy with that as a winter hat. Look at the back there, pretty good. But what I will do, just like a boot, when you first get a boot, you soak the leather in water and then wear it for a few days to shape it to your head. I'll probably wet the inside of this, the leather side, and just make it really nice and supple, and then I'll probably wear it for a day just as it dries on my head, and then it can really adjust to the shape of my head. I mean, I'm happy with that as it is, but I think it'd be really nice just to shape it a little bit better. So after wetting the leather side of the roo hide and then placing it on my head and wearing it for the full day, it's come out really nicely. Here it is here. It's molded to the shape of my head, sits on perfectly. I love the shape of it. Have a look at the final product. Pretty cool, do some modeling. But I'm really happy with this, and you know, yes, hides like possum hides and roo hides were probably more commonly used for things like cloaks and for blankets. We do see like the mountain men in the US and the trappers wearing fur hats, so it's not out of the question that an old timer in the 1800s here in Australia might be wearing a fur hat made out of roo or possum. So yeah, it's kind of keeping with a long line of tradition, while also using some modern techniques as well to create this hat. Something that I'm really happy about, something that I'm going to be taking out in the snow with me this year, and perfect in the winter, I'd say. So yeah, very happy with that. So Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure if you do want to do something like this, you check out your own laws and regulations for the state that you live in and stick within those. I also just want to say a big thank you to Will and Eva, and also for Jaden Cameron for giving me advice on how to bark tan as well. So otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Plenty more educational videos coming in the future.